Hello, and welcome to yet another conversation with. So tonight we have a pretty cool conversation all ready and raring to go. We are going to be talking to, of course, David, as usual. I'll bring him in a second. And yet another David. We have two Davids for the price of one tonight. And the David Gibson, of course, being David number 2 or David number 1, depending on your perspective, is... well, I mean, I'll let him tell his story, but he is absolutely a very, very, very seriously experienced individual, both in and outside of video games. He's done a bunch of work in a number of different animation-based industries, and but he currently resides mostly in video games, sort of like myself. So let's bring in those two wonderful human beings, and we'll have our little chatty chat. Hold on one second. Here he comes. Here comes David. There he is. That's my sound effect. Hi. You like my sound effect when you come in? I'm a professional beatboxer. I don't know if you knew that, but that's sort of like a side gig that I have. So
I was slightly impressed.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, I mean, it gets better. Just let me warm up a little bit.
That's a good thing. The glass is full. There is plenty of room for improvement.
Exactly. I think I just need another muse. Let's bring that other muse in here, and then we'll be able to up my game. David number 2, how are you? Or are you David number 1 or David number 2? Should you guys have like a Thunderdome match and see who survives to be number 1 or what?
I'm willing to give David Gibson the number 1 spot tonight.
Wow. High praise.
I made the call.
Hello, David Gibson. How are you this evening? And
I'm good.
Good. That's great. And where are we connecting from? Where in the world are you these days?
So I live in sunny Long Beach, California.
Oh, that's really terrible. I really, it must be difficult.
It's not difficult.
Yeah. That's what
but I ended up in this spot because the industry is kind of split between Orange County and Irvine.
Yeah.
And then like Santa Monica and LA. And I figured, well, if I want to, I don't know, raise a family and own a home
and not have to move every other year.
And not have to move all the time, I should probably land somewhere in the middle.
Makes sense. So wise. Yeah. And it just happens to be a beach. I'm sure that was it had nothing to do with anything. Well, speaking of industries and speaking of being in the middle of everything, why don't you just give us kind of a quick, whatever, like I always say the nutshell tour, but like that's kind of difficult when you have as many years of experience as you do. But why don't you give us a basic idea as to kind of what started this journey? What were the kind of crazy sort of shenanigans you got up to along the way, and kind of more or less what do you find yourself doing these days? So
sure. I like to call this the movie trailer version.
Okay, that's good. Or the elevator
of a career. Yeah. Well, I didn't always know that I wanted to be an animator. I used to play music. That's what I thought I was going to do. I have my cello back there in the back.
There it is. Oh, a cello, even string guy.
Yeah, I played professionally for a while, and it was kind of like I was a big orchestra dork in high school, and
these are the kind of things that come out in these conversations. This is does this show up in interviews? No, but it shows up in a conversation.
There you go. Yeah,
nice.
And I think it hit me one time after like a private lesson or some crazy rehearsal where I was like, I don't think I want to make this my life. I'm going to hate it if I have to do it all the time. And around that time, I think I had seen Toy Story and like Jurassic Park had come out. And I was a little kid at the time, but I was just kind of like, whoa, people get paid money to like, that's someone's job. It's to like make dinosaurs, like tear up a Ford Explorer or something. Like that sounds cool. And so the more I sort of like found out about that and learned about it, I remember a friend gave me a copy of True Space. Do you guys ever use True Space 3D?
Yes.
That was the first thing I ever used. And I had no idea what it was.
That's old school.
Yeah. And I just made like text spin around and stuff, but there was something about it. Like it was really satisfying to sit there and pour hours into it and then, watch the thing move and you're like, oh, I did that. All right, cool. So I decided, hey, I should probably look into art schools. And I found Ringling School of Art and Design, which was actually 15 minutes away from my house in Florida. I was like, oh, score. This is great. I'll just go there. This will be really easy. And then they didn't accept me the first year because I didn't have any art school, like art classes or anything. Yeah. And so I talked to admissions and I was like, well, what should I do? Like, they were like, well, we'll take you for illustration or fine arts or something. And I was like, no, I want to do animation.
Translation, like, we'll take your money for a year at least.
Exactly.
Sure. Don't go.
We'll throw you into these majors that you're not interested in. And so for a year I worked 4 jobs and just did art stuff. Like they gave me these kind of like 6 prompts, you know, like draw a crumpled up paper bag, draw, you know, a still life, draw this, draw from life, like all that sort of stuff. And so I just filled out a portfolio. And then that second year that I applied, so this would have been for the year 2000, I also was not accepted. Ooh. But I was waitlisted. I think I was like 23 or 24 on the wait list. And I'm crushed at this point because I'm like, sure. What do I do if I don't make it? And I remember this woman in admissions was like, stay on the list. I've seen it happen. I've seen this many people, you know, either bow out or switch schools or something. She's like, I think it can happen. And so sure enough, it was 2 weeks before school started, and she called me up. She's like, you're in, you got it. And I was sweating bullets because I'm like, school starts in like 2 weeks. I don't.
So did you leave at the part where you like slip money out of the desk, or is that
I didn't. I just got super lucky. But I feel like I feel like there's some part of me still like lives in that moment where I'm like, oh, I was waitlisted, huh? Oh, I wasn't good enough the first time, huh? Yeah, like that, and it's just like fueling me constantly.
A little tip on the shoulder.
Yeah, like I'll show you. Like okay, but at the same time, I thank them too because it's like, well, maybe that fuel wouldn't have been there.
Sure. Yeah, you obviously took it seriously and you really dug in. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was great. I was able to stay at home, save a bunch of money, you know, go to school, and really great memories of friends that were in Sarasota from out of state would come over like on Sundays for family dinners because they missed that at their, you know, because they were away from home and that sort of thing. And so they would come over. My mom was always like, you know, calling me like, how many people? And I'm like, 6, 7 people. And she's like, all right, you better stop at the store and get more, you know, chicken or something, you know, like I didn't make that much pasta. So you got to figure that out. But so I did the 4 years. It was great. I always just wanted to do animation. You know, I wasn't interested in lighting or modeling or that kind of stuff. Like I understood I needed to appreciate it. I needed to understand it, but I was always like, no, I want to do animation. Like I want to make the dinosaur run around and eat people, or I want to make the person, you know, act or pick up the object or drive the car, whatever they're doing. And so I was really gunning for like some type of job in animation. And I got a job at EA. It's kind of listen to the iAnimate podcast if you want to hear like the full story, but got a job at EA cleaning up mocap in 2004 on Madden. And there was a part of me where I was like, this is not what I want to do. This is not what I thought I'd be doing, but hey, they're paying me and I have student loans due. So I'll take this. But the entire time I was there, I was animating at home at night and I was doing dialogue, like lip sync stuff, like 11-second kind of competition stuff. And then I got a call from Tippett Studio and they were like, hey, we're staffing up for Charlotte's Web and we'd like to interview you for that and see if you want to come out. And then they moved me out to Berkeley, which I was like, that was the first taste of that too. Like, wow, this company's paying for me to like move me to California across the whole country. Then I was there for about almost 5 years, 4.5 years. I think I was at Tippett. I love that place. Like that. If there was anywhere that I've worked that I would go back in a second, it would be Tippett. Like it was the coolest, like really great people.
I've heard nothing but good things about that place. The work too, like the work that these guys work on, like that team is just famous. And
there's something about like, you are like a 10-minute walk from Pixar when you work at Tippett. And it kind of hits you sometimes. You're kind of like, oh yeah, we're not the cool ones, but everyone at Tippett gives 100%. Like they work so hard and they care so much about everything that they're working on that it just, I don't know. Like I'm so glad I got my start at a studio like that. I always kind of get a little sweaty when someone's like, I just graduated from school and I'm starting at Blizzard or Pixar or something. I'm like, oh, that's, I don't know. Good luck. Good luck with that. Yeah. Because I feel like you have like a pretty warped sense of the industry. If that's where you come in at, you know,
it's hard to like, exactly. You're always going to be like, the next jobs are never going to quite do it for you. You're going to be like looking for something that just doesn't exist. Like,
or if you come in that high at the beginning, like where do you go?
That's what I mean. Like you lose that sense of progress and the grass is actually going to get greener on the next one. It's tricky.
So David, what was the game at EA that you worked on that you
Madden
for?
Madden football. Yeah.
All right, so going into animation for, performance, acting, maybe a little bit of creature, a little entertainment, and then you're cleaning mocap for football players' data.
Yeah. It was a year spent basically like living in the graph editor, and like I would import the mocap and I would start to see like little blips in the curves, and I would see gimbal, flips and things like that. And I don't regret it at all, because I feel like I just got so comfortable with the tools that I don't know. I use it still today, where I can just look at the graph editor and be like, oh, there's a problem on frame 65. Like I can already tell. Like there's something.
Yeah, that's something I think it was Richard Lico that mentioned it, and others that I work with as well. When you work with mocap for long enough, it's almost like you see motion just looking at curve, and you understand locomotion of all those different parts, because it might be a long and painful process, but after that you kind of benefit from it for the rest of your career.
Yeah, it also opens your eyes. Like I remember doing this series of animations where if you were running and you were close enough to the end zone, you could tap a button and the player would do like one of these 6 like dives into the end zone. Mm-hmm. And it showed me like, oh wow, you can actually move something over like 1 or 2 frames, and the feeling that you get of that immediacy of that jump, or the way that he rolls, I'm looking at this raw footage of a person doing it. Mm-hmm. I was like, wow, that's a 2-frame move. Like I would have never had the confidence to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the difference between you looking and analyzing a reference and sometimes pushing it, or just letting your brain trying to figure out, that must be a 6, 7, 8 frames move. No, it's a 1 or 2 frame move.
Yeah. And so, just like long story short, I did film for a while. I kind of bopped around. I went to Sony ImageWorks and worked on Cloudy and a couple other films. And then at that point, I kind of felt like, well, there were 2 things. I kind of felt like I had worked on a couple feature films, and I was kind of like, oh, I get this. I get it. Mm-hmm. Like I could do this for 20 more years and it'll be this every single time. And Sony was asking me to move to Canada. And I was like, no offense, but I was like,
but I'm from the South. I don't do winter.
Yeah. But I just was kind of like, I live here. I like it here. I don't want to move to Canada, and the other thing was that Sony had they had a studio in Albuquerque that they started in, I can't remember, maybe 2007, around that time. And a ton of people moved there because it was like affordable. And they were like, hey, I can move there. I can buy a house. I can have room for my family and stuff. And then Sony shuttered that studio, I think like 2 or 3 years later.
Yeah.
And so there was a part of me like, guys, so if I move to Canada, am I going to find myself in Canada in 3 years without a job? Like, is that the trend that's going to happen? But at the same time, I was kind of like, I think I want to get into games. Like, that's what I was passionate about. That I would talk with friends about games all the time. I'd play games all the time. And so I applied to Blizzard, and it was for Project Titan. And I was like, this is it. I've done my time in film. They're just going to slot me right in. Right. And I do the tests and everything. It takes like 9 months to do the whole entire process.
Oh yeah.
Tests, interviews. Yeah. I get there and they're like, yeah, we don't actually want you for Titan, but if you want to talk to like World of Warcraft or other things or something. And I was like, oh no. What else is out there? And then I found Turtle Rock and the guys that made Left 4 Dead. And they were like, oh, we've got this new game. We got it's like a monster and he's hunting these other 4 characters and all this stuff. And I was like, wow, really? But this is the other thing. Like Blizzard wouldn't tell me anything about Titan when I was there for that interview. They're like, we can't tell you anything. We know you'd like it, but we can't tell you.
Oh my God.
And there's a level of like, oh, come on, guys. Like, I've been around
just a little,
block, like just a little something,
Just throw me a bone.
But when I met with Turtle Rock, they were so real. They were like, come down to the studio. We will show you everything. And they literally like split, the owners of the company just splayed all the concept out on this conference room table. And they were like, look at it. This is what we're thinking for this. What do you think about? And we just were jamming.
That's cool.
Already on ideas. And it's like, that was the best way to do an interview.
For sure.
You got the red
meet and greet.
The red carpet treatment.
Yeah. Well, but not just that, like we were working.
That's it.
You know?
Yeah, they got a taste of what it would be like with you on the job. And at the end of the day, if it was great ideas that were coming out of you, with whether you took the job or not, they just got some free great ideas out of you. It's perfect. Everybody wins. Everybody wins.
Yeah, and that studio is great. I think I was like the 20th person hired or something. So it was a complete 180 from Sony Pictures. Right? I was like one of 500.
I'm just going to warn you. I'm going to want to come back to that. That particular job. I'm just putting a little earmark in this conversation because this one I'm particularly interested in picking your brain about. From a fan, I was really up with the hype of that game, and I just, anyways, I don't want to ruin it because I want to see where this trajectory goes, and then I'm going to bring us back in time and talk about that.
Yeah, so we worked super hard on that game. There was one moment about 2 years in. I was there for a little over 4 years in order to ship Evolve, and about 2 years in, THQ was our publisher, and they went bankrupt. Yep. And that was my first realization. Like, did I make a mistake? Should I stay? Should have stayed in film? Yeah. Is this going to become my story about how I was on this great project and then we lost funding and it never saw the light of day, sort of thing? But then 2K came in and was like, "No, we will publish this. We'll buy it and see it through." So that was awesome. You know, to work with them, kind of to see both, like how both publishers worked, was really cool. And shipped that game, and then when that was done. A friend of mine at Blizzard reached out to me, and he was on Overwatch, and he's like, "Hey man, we really need another animator. What do you think?" And I was like, "Hey, let's just go to lunch. Let's get lunch tomorrow. You know, I'm just down the street. Let's meet at this restaurant." And so we just had lunch, and I met the lead and a couple of the other animators. And I feel like at that point I was kind of like, I can do the job, guys. I just shipped this game. You know, I've been in film for a long time. It's more about like, do we like each other? Is this, you know, a good fit? That sort of thing. And it was great. And so I ended up doing the whole interview cycle with them and stuff, and joined Overwatch and Blizzard, and was there for, again, like a little over 4 years. And then I was on a super cool new project at Blizzard that I wish could have seen the light of day. But that one did not. So that became my story about how the project was canceled.
That honestly, that company, along with a few others, well, I think all game companies have like a lot of these amazing ideas in the graveyard that never got to see the light of day for sometimes dumb reasons, sometimes good reasons. But I know for a fact, I know a few of those Blizzard ideas that died, and man, oh man.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's really interesting is when it happens, you know, you mourn a little bit for the idea, for the game.
Yeah.
But when you're there, and I was on it for 2 years, I'm mourning for the team.
Yeah.
Because, man, after 2 years of working with 50 people, you become like a well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, you can throw out an idea on Monday and have it playable by Wednesday. And it's stuff like that where it's like, when you cancel a project, it's one thing to be like, oh yeah, this game won't ever get to players. But it's the other thing where you're like, you just 50 people who had honed their skills to work together, just poof, scattered to the wind, you know? And it's such a bummer. You're like, man, you could have taken those 50 people and moved us over to Diablo
Use that
or
momentum.
Something. Yeah. But instead you just just scattered us, and you lose all that momentum and cooperation that we had built up.
And do you feel at that time that the team understood why the project was canceled, or it was a surprise to? Because I've been on some projects that were canceled, and you know, it might have been for marketing reasons, or okay, the project is getting out of control, is going to cost too much, or a lot of reason that has nothing to do about is it going to be a fun and you know, beautiful game or not. So what was the?
So I think the team had a lot of great developers, but the majority of the team was pretty green, or they had been on one other project. So a lot of people were surprised. Personally, I wasn't surprised. I kind of was looking around like, I've been on this project for 2 years. This doesn't feel like 2 years worth of progress. You know, like I'm like, I think someone might be like, hey, what are you doing over there? But it was not, my head had not gotten to like, oh, they're going to cancel it. I just thought maybe they were going to come in and maybe crack the whip a little bit and say, hey, we're going to set like some really aggressive milestones to push you, because we kind of weren't feeling super pushed. But then when they were like, boom, it's canceled, that the majority of the team was like,
crushed.
What?
Yeah.
like, okay. And yeah, so it was pretty tricky. Luckily I had some lines in the water, like with some friends where, cause I don't know, like I really have learned to like trust my spidey sense a little bit. And I don't know. I just had this weird feeling. I was like, I think something's going on. So I pinged there were two animators that were over at Riot that had been on Overwatch. And I just pinged them like, hey, cause they had pinged me like a year before. And I'm like, hey guys, so I don't know, is that job still open? And they're like, yes, we could use you. And so I started that whole process. But I mean, it's a process, right? It takes months. Usually, even if it's a fast interview hiring process, it'll take 3-4 months.
Oh, yeah.
Like to wrap it all up. And so I got super lucky that the Blizzard project was canceled on like, I think it was like on a Monday, and my Riot offer came through on that Friday. So I had plenty of options.
Fate.
It was fate. And what was really good about that was that I didn't have to just take what Blizzard told me I had to do. And I was able to kind of say like, thanks, but no thanks. I'm gonna go try this other thing. And and then I went to Riot. And then in my second week at Riot as just an animator on Valorant, the lead animator left and came up to me and was like, I told them you should be the lead. See ya.
Ciao, bye. I'm leaving. Good luck with that.
And the only thing I did was I grabbed his arm and I was like, are you leaving? Like, are you leaving me in a lurch? Yeah, like exactly. Tell it to me straight. Like I think this project is great. I think we can take this and run with it. And I think it could be something really awesome. But if I've only been here 2 weeks. So if I'm not seeing something, please just give me a heads up, And he was like, no. There's a startup I want to go try. That's it. He's like, Riot's great. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna trust you. And he was right. Like that's, we got the game out. It's super successful. And it was a really fun project. So
I'm curious, you arrived there after 2 weeks. Can you please be lead? Okay. How do you handle that? Because usually it's not, it's not how it's done. I mean, you get a lead when you've been there for a while and people trust you. And then, so how did that happen? Yeah. And how did you deal with it?
I'll be totally honest. When I got there, I was viewing everything through the lens of like, I'm an animator on the team. Because I was leading the project at Blizzard that was canceled. So I'm like, okay, I'm just an animator. I'm just here to make cool stuff and hopefully push the project forward, And from that frame of mind, I was already like, there's some stuff I'm not happy with on the team, And I actually think that it kind of helped me a little bit to see it from that point of view. Right. I came in and I saw it, as an animator, and I immediately was like, wait, there's some stuff here that I don't like it. I don't really agree with it. So some things like, they were outsourcing a lot of the work. And so they would do, the animators would block in just the first pass of, an agent's abilities, right? In first person, block it in. And then they would send that out to another studio. And then they would just get it back, and they give some notes along the way, get it back, and then clean it up. And what I was noticing was that I would talk to the animators, and I know most of them. I'm like, hey, you guys seem like really disconnected and like you don't really care. And they're like, why would I care? I don't even animate it. Someone else animates it, And I go, you're right. Yep. I felt the same way when I heard like, oh, I'm gonna block it in. Like by the time it gets back, I could have finished like 3 of them. Like, well, and so
do you feel that this feedback was given to production before, or it was kind of
that's
frustration that was kind of kept on the?
That's a good question. There was definitely like a lot of history and stuff that had gone on before I got there, but just from my point of view, I saw that and I was like, okay, well, that's a problem of ownership, right? Animators don't feel any ownership, so why should they care about quality? And then the other thing was that there was a real lack of direction for animation. Like there was a direction for the project, but no one was like inspiring or like getting the animators like excited about what they were working on. And then there also was just like kind of a lack of motivation on the team. Like the team didn't feel like they should hurry to finish their tasks. And so what I did was I sat down with production and we went over the whole schedule. And the first thing I did was, we need to pull in all the work. I don't care what the deadline is. We will make it work, but it needs to stay in-house as much as humanly possible because it's hurting the team, you know? And then the other thing was with ownership, they were also splitting a lot of the characters. So one person would do like 2 abilities for a character, and then another animator would do 2 abilities for that same character. And I'm like, no. One animator should own the character. They can handle it. They can get it done. And then another animator can hold another character. And then that way you care.
Why is it something? There are 3 animators here. Why does it seem extremely obvious to us that it should be the case, but it's not always how it's managed?
Yeah. What I think happened in this case was there was a very aggressive deadline that was like 9 months out. It was super scary. Like on paper, I saw it and I was like, you're never going to hit that date. Like that is crazy. Right. And I think what happened is people get real freaked out, and production and the leads and the managers are like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? And so they just do whatever they can to make it make sense on paper, but they're not necessarily taking into account, well, what is this going to do to the artists that are creating the work? What is it going to do to the team? Is it going to result in like high quality? Is the team going to be happy, which means they're going to work faster? It felt like it was much more about like, we have to make this make sense on paper to hit the date.
No, and I think that's a trap, that it looks good on Excel, but you completely disregard ownership, motivation, and inspiration, which are the element that makes a team efficient and functional, and on top of things, having fun.
But what I loved about Riot in that situation was I was straight with them because the clock was ticking, and I was straight like, this isn't going to work. Like this, we will not hit this date if we stay this way. And they go, tell us what to do. And I said, all right, let's sit down. And I told them what to do, and they did it. And there was no like, you just got here, you don't know, or anything. They were just like, help us. Like we need help. We know we need help. And that's what's awesome about Riot, is that's kind of their mentality. Like as a company, is like, hey, we know we're not perfect, so we hired you to help us, right? We didn't hire you so that, you know, you can just get the job done. Like we need your feedback. We need your fresh input and your help. And so right off the bat, that was a huge amount of trust that they gave me, and it paid off. And it felt really good when we were just banging on all cylinders. And then I thought we produced some really, really quality results in a insane amount of time, and some other like just crazy like technical limitations and stuff under the hood. But yeah.
I think it's those kind of invisible force that are sometimes very difficult. And it seemed that in this situation, like management was ready to do whatever needed, but they just missed this crucial piece of information of, okay, no one is having fun here, so there's no heart into it. There's no passion. We might be dragging our feet a little bit, and here's the piece that is missing to kind of start to go in the right direction.
Yeah, and I think that's where having experienced people in their craft move up into leadership roles, that's where it's actually really, really important and impactful, is that I can tell you what an animator wants, because I've been in their shoes. Like I can tell you when they're not going to like this decision, or when they're going to think this thing is dumb, or, you know, whatever it is. I already know what they're going to say, and so I can help you present it in a better idea, or like in a better way, or you know, present it so that the team is on board, so they're there to support it, you know, from the get-go.
Yeah.
So
And
basically, you're like an animation or an animator whisperer.
I mean, aren't we all?
I mean, I guess.
No, but
can
I
read
think
their
if there's
minds.
anyone out there that is asking me, so, oh, what's the difference between a leader and a manager? Well, that's exactly the difference. The manager is going to make sure that on paper, you know, we have the resources, we have deadline, we have a workflow, everything looks, and then let's go execute and coordinate and all that. A leader will actually understand what motivates people and what's going to drive them to be inspired and provide the best work that they can provide, and then is going to do the social games that needs to be done of what information needs to be told to what person to make sure that this thing will happen, which is going to so it's a big puzzle that you have to solve. But that's a very interesting I would say story that highlight this difference right there.
Yeah, and I remember when that was happening, I think Anna, the executive producer, checked in on me after a couple weeks, and she's like, "How's it going? You know, like, is it working well? Like, are you okay with taking over this role?" That sort of thing. And I was like, "This is the most fulfilled I've felt in years. Like, it's so challenging, but when you get all the pieces just right, and you see that shift in the members of your team, where they become excited, they become invested, and they're really pushing each other to up the quality and make the work really, really stand out. And you're just kind of like, it's happening. It's happening. You know? Like, it's just it feels so good. You're like, yes, all right, cool. And then you're like, on to the next challenge. Like, let's do it, you know?
But that's great, because big studios like Riot and others are often, you know, notorious for being difficult to move things. So that's actually a great example of, well, you know, a fairly important decision that seems to have been done very rapidly and mostly pushed by one person in this big machine for sure. So is that something that you've experienced or seen in other studio? Because it doesn't happen often in big studio that you're able to change things like this.
Yeah, I can't think of anything off the top of my head. I know that there were quite a few times when I was in film where I could tell that the team maybe was starting to get a little detached. You know, just maybe we had been on the project for a while, or we were working on a sequence that wasn't that interesting, you know, like mouth replacement or something. And there were a few times there where I would see the leads, like, you know, try to build you back up, like reinforce like why this is going to be cool, and, you know, talk about like, just think about like when people go to see it in the theater and they're there and they're with their kids and they're laughing at the joke, even though we've seen it 3,000 times and it's not funny anymore. They're gonna spit their Coke out and drop popcorn everywhere because it's so hilarious, and it's because of the work you're doing. Like, I remember sitting in those rooms, and sometimes I kind of be like, okay, man, all right. Like, yeah. I still kind of don't care, but I'll go do the best I can for you.
But I appreciate the efforts.
Yeah.
After enough of those little pep talks, you can almost predict when it's like, okay, it's only a matter of time before they use the whole Coke spitting joke. Okay, here it comes.
Here we go. It's coming.
So motivated. I'm suddenly so motivated.
I'm going to go completely left field here. You've one of the, I don't want to say rare, but there's not a lot of animators that I know that did animated feature and VFX and creature work and gameplay animation and all that. So you basically touched to all those different. How would you compare them, and what did you enjoy and didn't like with each one of them, if you can compare them a little bit?
Yeah. I think what I liked the most about feature was you kind of own the whole shot. So you can even, oh, hey, I want to tweak the camera a little bit, or, oh, I know they already sort of like layout did the set, but it would make this gag work a lot more if I could just scoot the chair over like a couple feet. Is that cool? There's something about being able to like kind of like design the whole frame, within Feature. But then equally, that was kind of fun in VFX, where you were like, okay, I have these crazy constraints. Like literally there's a plate of Amy Adams putting her hands down and then lifting her hands up, and I have to put a chipmunk in her hands and then kiss her cheek. And it's like, okay, she's moving way too fast, like this, all this, and you're just kind of like, but I got to make it work, right? Like I gotta work with these constraints. And that's another thing that I like about games too, is that you're like, okay, I've only got 100 bones for this character. Like, okay, but I need it to, have a personality and feel powerful, or, whatever it is. But like, I got to make every bone count, and every, vert on this thing's gotta do its job. Where I think the shift happened for me between film and games, what you create in film can only exist in that shot, in that camera angle, right? So if I make a cool creature that breaks down a wall and chases somebody through a tunnel or something, like that's cool, but it can only ever do that. Yeah. And it only ever will. Where it switched to games was, okay, now let's take that creature and kind of like deconstruct it down to all of the pieces that it would require to have it move in any way like the player wants it. Like if they move to the right, okay, we need animations that support that thing. If they want to run, if they want to climb, if they die, if they jump, if they eat, whatever it is, it's like this cool science experiment where you're trying to build this whole thing back up so that when the player is using it, they don't see any of that. And they think like, I am this creature right now, or I am riding this horse, or I am shooting this gun, or whatever it is. But underneath, we're all going like, okay, we need about 150 assets. We need an aim pose here, and we need sloped this and that and this, and then once you put it all together, that magic trick kind of creates this thing that the player can make do whatever they want, like go wherever they want, do silly stuff too if they want. That's what fascinates me now, is how can we make more believable, entertaining characters with personality, but they're in a in-game, like real-time environment, and they can react to you, and they can react to what you do and don't do. That kind of stuff. I'm like, oh man, that is just makes me geek out.
Yeah, I'm with you. I feel exactly the same way. It's like, I remember the first time I saw a shot of mine on the big screen, and like, watching the audience react in some emotional way, it felt very cool. Like, it was like, wow, like I can't believe people are connecting with something that I worked so hard on in a way that it kind of moved them emotionally. But that's still yet, nothing matches the feeling of like that. It's like the satisfaction of building out a character fully. I feel like a mad scientist. I feel like Dr. Frankenstein, who's like literally providing life to this thing that, like, especially if it's gonna be controlled by AI, because I mean, if assuming that the AI, logic is really good, it makes them feel like they really do come to life. And it seems just so exciting that you brought like true life to something, as opposed to a kind of preordained kind of like life that's scripted. Like, I mean, it's powerful, sure, but like, it's not the same thing in my mind. And the challenges technically are just so tricky.
Well,
so it keeps me interested.
There's something about the process too, where, so in the film, it's already been scripted, storyboarded, it's an animatic, it's got rough dialogue, it's, now it's made it to animation, and now you do your part, and then you send it to cloth and hair and lighting and effects and, so on, right? You just do your one part and then push it to the next part of the pipeline. In games, it's like, okay, we need to make this player controlled character that can fly, shoot lightning, burrow into the ground, and like climb walls and do all this stuff. And it's like, okay, well, I don't know how to make it do any of that stuff. I can make it look cool while it does that stuff. And then so now you're sitting there with, your concept artist and your programmer and your audio designer and your you know, your technical artist, and you're like, okay, how do we do this?
Figure this out together.
Yeah, like let's all work together. We all have a piece of the puzzle.
Yep.
And let's all come together and figure out how we make this the coolest thing we can.
It's funny that you say this, because I you know, I'm drinking your Kool-Aid. The problem is that I've noticed in a lot of projects that struggle, they don't quite get it to the point where the departments are able to do that well. Like, I find that's that secret sauce of getting everyone to realize that, look, here's the vision of this thing. This is what we needed to do. But there's enough room in there for these different departments to get together and kind of sort it out. That seems like such an awkward dance for a lot of teams. And I think some teams just do this really well, and other teams really struggle. And I don't know if it's a leadership thing, if it's a kind of a cultural sort of like a philosophical thing that goes into the way that the way that studio makes games. You know, because I often still talk about, look, there's a difference between, you know, there's like, yes, we need to figure out how to make this game and how to make a good game. But then you know what we also need to do? I feel like we as a group need to understand better and decide on how we go about making the game, because the making the game process is in itself kind of like a game. And if you don't play that well, then the product is not going to be great.
It's so funny you say, just as an aside, it's so funny you say that, because my son will be like, well, Daddy, why don't you want to play this game? And because I'm always trying to come in here to work on a game, like making my own game. I'm like, oh, hang on, I just want to go do that thing or whatever. And he's like, why don't you want to play a game with me? Or it's not with me, but why don't you want to play this game?
Yeah.
I'm like, actually, I kind of feel like the ultimate game is making a game.
It is. It really is. I remember the first time I ever played. Do you ever play like the game dev simulator? It was like a little bit like it's like one of those it's like one of those simulator games where it's like and it's like a kind of a text based, and it's on your phone. I got really addicted to that game because it's because someone tapped into that. They're like, hey, making a game is like a game, and they just made a game that was literally making a game.
Yeah, because it's all just a big. If you like puzzles, if you like Sudoku, if you like whatever those like,
then something for everybody.
Yeah, like
I know there's human puzzles just because there's personalities in politics. There are technical puzzles that are like gonna break your brain because you're like you know animation lives on that cusp, that verge, that horizon, that razor's edge of like aesthetics and like playability and like what's plausible for like the GPU what can it even do? Like it's just you're always living on that teetering edge.
Yeah,
and it's always like exciting because you always feel like you're discovering something for the first time when you're doing it.
Yeah, I think to go back to what you were saying about like how can a team be successful in that sort of like space there.
Yeah,
for me, I think a lot of it comes down to like it's the way the studio is set up, and it's the approach to leadership.
Yeah,
and honestly, it's just, I think it's all about trust. If you can instill trust into the team and say, hey, we hired you because we know you know what you're doing and you're good. Mm-hmm. We trust that you will finish this work. We will not micromanage you. Go make something awesome. Yeah, well, and that sounds, I mean, it's not that easy.
Sounds obvious. No,
right?
It's not.
But it's not obvious. And it's also, it's a lot of like nonverbal sort of communication stuff as well, where, you know, hey, I say don't micromanage, but that doesn't mean don't check in. Like, hold me accountable.
Exactly.
It's more about like, if I make a thing and I show it to you, don't just tell me to make it what you want it to be.
Exactly.
Like let's collaborate. Like if it's a collaborative kind of feel like that.
Totally.
And then once you find it and that team is operating in that space, like that's where that's where the kind of magic happens, right? Like that's where just super cool things you never even thought were going to make it into the game just are like, wow, where'd that come from?
Yep. Yeah, I've been a lot of projects that like are just these big, like stressful undertakings because the ambitions are high, the scope is big, and things aren't being produced at a quick enough speed, and it usually leads to some sort of panic. And next thing you know, there's more production managers on the floor, and what they're doing is they're just making stuff. People do stuff, and they're chasing deadlines, and then suddenly you realize, wait a minute, like we've lost our way. We don't even know what the project is right now. No one has even sat me down and maybe play a prototype that I feel is actually working and is fun. We don't even know what the core gameplay loop is, but yet we're stressed about giving everybody work. And I mean, and I get how this happens because these big companies have big people, big teams, and they shift off of one project and they end up on another project. And I have always said, I've yet to be on a project where this does not happen. And I look at the producer, I'm like, we need to be very careful, because if I see there's another team shipping something right now, this team is not ready to bring on more people. If we do, we are going to be doomed, because now suddenly the people who do need to figure out what we're making will be busy making work for other people and being distracted by the thing that we need most. And it's always like, we know. And then suddenly, of course, this tidal wave of people show up and then we're lost at sea. I could count the number of times more than I wish I could. It's sad.
But that's not an easy.
No,
that's not an easy problem to solve, because on one
not.
side you have, let's say, the smaller studio that needs to. Oh, now we need to ramp up and hire a lot of people, and you might not find them. Yeah. You have the middle, big size studio that have maybe 2 or 3 games, and this is those tidal wave that you. Discuss, and you need to make sure that the end of your pre-production is exactly timed with the
totally,
and you have those massive studio that can run into some of the situation that you that you illustrated, David, which is basically, well, there's almost infinite time and money, so you can kind of lose your way and somehow don't have this little fire that you need to have behind.
Well, I think one thing to always remember is, like, no one starts a job, no one is in the interview process for a job and they're completely apathetic.
Yeah.
Like, you don't start on your first day and you're like, I don't care, like, whatever. Are you kidding? No one does that. Like, no one starts the job like that, right? But how many of us have ended up there?
Yeah.
In the job, right? Like, I'm guilty. Like, there's been plenty of times where I'm like, yeah, whatever. Like, like they don't even know what's going on. I don't know what's going on. Like, what? Yeah. Like, and that's where I think once you're in a position of leadership, you need to think about that, and you need to be like, hang on a second. Why are people starting to disconnect? Why isn't there that fire anymore? Right? Rather than saying, hey, get your butt in gear and get your work done, because that's not going to help, newsflash. It's more like, hey, you got to just maintain, and you always have to be sort of aware of how it feels for the dev team that's trying to make this stuff. And like, I don't know anything about Anthem. I don't know anything about the development of that, right? But I have a sneaking suspicion that the entire dev team eventually just got so tired of trying to tell them what was wrong, and no one was listening.
Yeah. And
so they all became completely apathetic, and then they shipped a product that was just kind of And I just picked that out. I just picked that project out of thin air, but like, there's millions of them. And where did that happen? Like, those people are rock stars. They're top of the industry.
Yeah.
They didn't just phone it in.
Yeah.
Like, something else caused that to happen.
It's funny you bring this up, because I was literally just talking about this, it was a while ago now, but Cyberpunk 2077. Sorry, 2077. 2077, right? Do I have that number, that name right? Yeah. Because it got big in the news because of, like, class action lawsuits and stuff like this. And it's funny because, well, it's not funny. I remember saying, like, look, the sad part of this is there is a team of devs that have been obviously working very hard on this. And there is guaranteed they feel exactly the same way. And they knew this game was going out before it should have. And yet it did, for whatever reason. And again, and I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus. Right. Like that's my point. Like, just going back to David's point about production, I wasn't trying to say, like, oh my God, it's like management that screws it all up. These are difficult problems that exist. Like, they wouldn't keep happening if it was an easy thing to avoid, right? This is another good example of that. It's like, it sucks that, like, so much negativity got surrounded by this game that had huge ambitions, and just like something went wrong at the end. This went out too early. Or so, for those of who've never worked in game production, there is a tremendous amount of pressure to get the game out the door, because there's a huge marketing engine that's about, you know, like spending millions of dollars trying to get like the word out. And like, so suddenly when that line gets drawn and the date gets set, it's like, and it's not like making a movie, right? There's so many things. Like when you start to cram in all these things at the end, things break, and they break badly, like very badly, and especially depending on how complex the game is. And so it's just, the tension just escalates and escalates, and things just start to fall apart around you, and it's stressful. And I wept that day for that team, because I mean, clearly that game is really, really awesome. It deserved better, but sadly it came out, and it you know, it's now in the history books as sort of a cautionary tale, and it's sad, really, you know.
Yeah, I know that one of my go-to approaches when I'm trying to lead a team and I'm kind of lost, I'm a little like, oh geez, I don't know if this is a good idea. I'm not super confident in this thing I'm about to ask them to do. I ask for their input. I go to the team and I say, okay, so I'll just be super honest. I'll be like, hey, I don't feel confident in this, but this is the best I can come up with. Can you help me? Can you guys think of better ideas? Like, do you guys think that I'm way off base here, or maybe I'm heading the right direction, but like you guys have some ideas to like tweak this, you know, so that we can be more successful in whatever we're trying to achieve. And what I've seen happen a lot of times at super big studios is it always seems like it's kind of like a top-down decision, like it's just disseminated to everyone. Like very rarely has it been, hey, entire dev team, we're kind of stuck. We don't know what to do here. Can you help us? Like, do you guys have thoughts? Because I think that once you kind of show like, hey, I don't know everything, I'm a little vulnerable, can you help me? Everybody is going to go, I want to help you.
Yeah.
Like just their instant reaction is going to be, oh, I want to help this person. Like, why wouldn't I? You know, and I think I have the answer because I'm very close to the project. I know what's going on. And I think people could just learn from like, hey, just put your guard down and ask your team.
Yeah.
And then let them be a part of the decision, because then they now also have some skin in the game.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I wonder, and again, I know nothing about Anthem or Cyberpunk or anything, but like, I wonder if the people at the top had turned to the team and said,
Yeah.
What do we do, guys? We are so screwed.
That's it.
Yeah.
The team probably would have been like, cut these 10 features. They're useless.
Totally.
Like they probably would have been like, this is what we do.
I totally agree. It's amazing to watch how for some weird reason there's a resistance to that, almost as if leadership is worried, but like we can't just then like, who's going to come to us with the answer for the answers? It's like, well, don't you get it? Like, that's not what you're supposed, like you're about winning, provide the winning conditions for the team. Make sure that the team feels like they're listened to, because I mean, you're dealing with, that's the thing about game dev too, that you're dealing with a team of people that are very experienced in these different areas, right? Like programming, like engineering, you have animation, you got art. These are hyper talented people, but they're not, more often than not, they're also avid gamers. Gamers that have friggin' good ideas about what a game should and should not be.
They're a part of your target audience.
They are.
Yeah.
They 100% are. You can like literally, if your team can't pass the sniff test, or if your project can't pass the sniff test with your team, you have a big problem for two reasons. A, they're not motivated because they're worried about polishing a turd, and B, because they don't want to buy this game. If you don't, why? It's part of the fantasy of making a game is you're making a game that now, I mean, there is a line to be drawn there. I mean, sometimes, people have to be reminded we're not making this game only for us. It needs to be for as many people as possible because, of course, money. But at the end of the day, there's a good chance that if all your team is thinking, I don't know, man, there's something wrong. There's something wrong in the beating heart.
This is where it makes a huge difference if you've been able to build trust within this team and that takes a long time. Trust is not something that you can just, paint on the wall or talk about or this or that. It's, as you said, asking for advice, giving the ownership, giving that. It is something that you build, and it goes both ways as well. You need to trust your leaders, but the leaders needs to trust the floor. And if they do, then they will feel that maybe it's okay to be, vulnerable and go there and be very transparent that guys, all right, let's work together because I'm not sure that we're going in the right direction. And I'll confess, I might be the one that is right now driving this bus that seems to be going straight in the wall. So let's brainstorm a little bit over here.
Hey, I don't want to miss my chance. I did promise I was going to bring something back, and this is I think it's perfect because it segues perfectly into what we're talking about. This idea of the complexities of working on a project, making sure that the team is motivated, and making sure that like people feel like there's like that soul that everyone's like, oh my God, we're so excited because we can't wait for this game to come out so we can play it too. A lot of these things are interesting dynamics that every game studio and every project's hopes can somehow find the recipe, the secret sauce to make it go like that. So we're like, I saw your eyes light up when you're talking about when you feel like things are going right suddenly and you see progress, you see the team kind of electrify and you're like, it's happening. It's like, it's the quickening, you know, in the animation, like, or in a game dev moment. And that's a hard, we talk about it like it's a unicorn because honest to God, it doesn't happen all the time. It is difficult to pull the right strings in order to make that happen. As you know, we could on a departmental level and even more difficult on a project wide level. I'm curious just to go back because Evolve, okay? Evolve is a really good example in my mind because that game came out with a big splash, a lot of energy behind it. Gamers were excited. There were a lot of pre-ordering, myself included, pre-ordered that game. Very, very excited. But then the game died very, very soon after it came out. I'm curious from your perspective, I mean, you're a perfect person to ask. What did it feel like? Because I mean, I get the feeling because the way you talked about that project is you bought into the dream, just like a lot of the players bought into the dream, but there was something about that game. And I don't want you to incriminate yourself. I don't want to put you in any kind of awkward position. So speak of what you feel comfortable about. But like, I know that what happened, the fate of that game was unfortunate because it came out and it had problems. It definitely had problems, but it had promise. But yet for some reason, it just kind of got bailed on. And like, I can only imagine that might even be more difficult for a team for like, I would almost rather they get canceled. And I'm just like, I have to deal with that, the remorse, as opposed to it goes out and then it dies like this terrible, like, you know, ugly death. Talk to me.
Yeah.
This is a therapy session now. Go ahead. Tell us what you feel.
So I've learned a lot from shipping Overwatch and Valorant now that I didn't know when I was working on Evolve. And the biggest thing is when a PvP only game goes out, for a lot of us developers, we are seeing that ship date as like, that's the date. Like, oh boy. Like if once we get to that date, we can breathe, we can relax, right? That we're done. We can take a vacation. We can just chill out. We think about something else, maybe start another project. But that's so wrong.
Then you wake up from that wonderful dream.
That's the day the game ships. That's when the job starts.
Yeah, I totally
And
agree.
Unfortunately, that's actually not when the job starts. The job actually should have started probably a year ago.
Sure.
For a live service PvP game, you need a completely separate
100%
set of people who are only thinking about how are we going to support this when it's live?
Exactly. Yep.
What's the content drop rate? What are the events? What's this look like? How do we communicate this to the players? Do we have, a unified communication strategy across all of our social media? Just like all that sort of stuff. What's the cadence that we think players are going to want for new characters or new maps or whatever? And that was the problem with Evolve. We were like, yeah, we did it, guys. We shipped it. We made it. And then so the internal dev team was like, we did it. All right. Now we can work on, we already knew what we wanted to work on for next characters. Like we were ready to go. And then we were like, okay, so someone here has been planning. Wait, no one has been planning for the day after?
Oh man.
Like that's literally what, like I remember someone, like St. Patrick's Day was coming up or something, and someone sent an email out like, hey, anybody have some good ideas for like something we could do for St. Patrick's Day? It was like literally like a week and a half. And I'm like, no, I'm sorry. we should have already had that figured out. You should be asking for ideas about I don't know, Christmas. We shipped in February.
Yeah,
maybe something for Christmas or later in the year, a Halloween event maybe. But like you're asking about something that's like less than 2 weeks out. We can't even make stuff for that.
Yeah,
like we can't even certify. Yeah, we can't even certify a patch for Xbox in that amount of time. Like, wait, what happened? And then I'm an animator. I don't know how to do this stuff. I've been busy animating. Like
I've been trying to ship this game. Yeah,
exactly. I've been trying to ship it, and so that's a lot of people like to point to, there was kind of some weird monetization stuff that happened with Evolve, and it was pretty, like, on the surface it appeared pretty dirty. It wasn't intentional. It just, the way it was presented was really skeezy, and it felt really bad. Like I didn't know when we shipped the game, we had all these skins for all the characters, right?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that the only way to get them was to buy them.
Yeah.
And as a developer, I can just type, give me the skin, and I get the skin. So I never went through that cycle of like, oh, I have to like link a card and then buy these 2K tokens with my 2K account and then go to this screen and then get the thing. And it's $3? $3 for a skin for this? What? Like, I never had to go through that cycle, or else I would have been, at the top of the building, like, hey, this is a big giant problem. Yeah. And that stuff was kind of handled, I think, by like this third party, and it only made it in like for launch day. And so the entire dev team was caught off guard. We were all like, what? Because you go to the store and there's like $300 worth of things to buy. And we were like, no. We thought you would just earn those. Like you would play, and for every hour you played, you'd earn a skin or something.
Well, and it was funny because I remember as a player again, I remember thinking, oh no, like I'm looking at these skins and they were literally just texture skins. There was like, it's not like what you'd expect from like people playing League of Legends and Dota, where it's like, no, like you can spend like serious cash on like some cool skins in those games, but you get like almost like a completely different look to the character, and it's quite severe. Where they were kind of going this old school approach where it's like just like a different color. And
and some of the, I mean, for it. Yeah, to give them credit, like some of the skins were pretty cool, but
I know for sure.
It's still like from an experience standpoint, you just spent $60.
Yeah, that's it. Oh,
and you're still asking me to buy these. I'm like, for real? Bad. Like I even looked at that and I go, I don't want to do that. Now, should the game have died? Well, and that's where I'm like, I don't think the game died because of that. I think it was all these other things.
It was
like
a mix of many things.
We didn't,
for sure.
we weren't dropping enough content fast enough. Exactly. We weren't updating the game, and I don't know if we were communicating well enough with the players.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, and the other thing too is like, in the thing that people need to remember, like again, like I said, when that game came out, I'm like, oh my God, it's like, this is like a fantasy game. This is the game I've been waiting for years. And I wasn't alone. People were excited as hell. But I think the problem is that inevitably, especially with PvP games, you need to hold on to the audience, because without the audience, there's no game.
It doesn't work.
So even the diehards that are like, no, I still buy into the vision. Just please, no, where are you guys going? No. But the problem is there's already too many other games that are doing all those things right, and so they're like, the players are like, sorry, but like nope, I'm not interested anymore. I'm already too busy. I'm going raiding tonight with my buddies. I went back to WoW for the 500th time because that's more interesting to me, because there's all kinds of stuff that I can unlock and discover in that game, and that's the problem, is like the competition is so intense in that market that you got to come out of the gates like firing all 500 cylinders, otherwise you are in trouble.
That was some other pretty complicated stuff that we had to try to handle on Evolve. But one thing that's sort of shared with all these PvP games is that, like you said, it doesn't work if no one's playing it.
Nobody.
It just doesn't work.
Exactly.
But Evolve had the added problem that it was asymmetrical.
Yes.
So
it's true. Very asymmetrical.
You were like,
balance becomes
difficult. Well, it's not even just a balance, but like, okay, so let's say you have 500 people that want to play.
Yeah.
But 300 of them want to play the monster. That means all these other people have to sit and wait because they need a monster. Totally. There's not enough people to play the other 4 people. Yeah. And so that just exacerbates the problem.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's why even during development, internally, we were constantly talking about doing free to play. because we were like, we just need numbers.
Yeah.
In order for matchmaking to work, we just need so many people playing.
Exactly. Yep.
And that's why I think, the approach that Riot takes is spot on, because you can just get League and Valorant. I mean, all their games are free.
Good point.
Right?
Absolutely.
So
they're all like that now.
And you just need butts in the seats,
absolutely,
so that you can fill those games and the queue times are quick, and you can get a good match.
Yeah. Worry about monetizing and doing all those other things later, because none of that's going to come unless you can hold the crowd, and that crowd will be held with people in seats. 100% agree.
And if it's free, there's kind of no reason.
Yeah. Well, it's got to be
not
good.
Try it.
Free and not good is like there's too many other just because there's too many games that are free that are amazing. So it still needs to pass the good test in my mind.
Well, and you also get, because it's free, you get this kind of almost like waves that kind of come with the player base too.
Yeah,
because they didn't necessarily have to fork over $60 and feel like I need to play this for like 3 months to feel like I get my money's worth. So maybe you just I'll try Valorant. All right. You play it for a week. You're like, I'm going to take a break. You go play something else. But then maybe 2 weeks later, you're like, oh yeah, I want to go back to Valorant. And you click that, and you play some, and it's like, you kind of come and go, but because there's not that it's $60.
Yeah.
It's way easier just to try it and then leave. And
meanwhile, no harm done.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the matchmaking is solid because there's so many people.
Exactly.
Sitting there
Matchmaking
playing.
needs telemetry, right? It needs a pool of people to pull from to be able to make sure there's good matches. Otherwise, no good. Well, thanks for humoring that. I mean, it was the Evolve thing it's funny. I'd forgotten that you'd worked on it. So we were having our little pre-chat. I was like, oh man, I finally can get some answers to some questions.
Yeah, but I'm still so proud of that
for
game
sure.
and that team. To think that at the beginning of 4 years, it literally was nothing. There was no Evolve. There was no game to play. Totally. And over the course of 4 years,
they made it happen.
A group of 50 to 60 people. Every day we were like, okay, let's try this. Let's do it. And then you stand back and you're like, hey, it's a game. It works.
Yeah. Well, because I feel like that's an interesting scenario where the game clearly had a lot of promise. That's my point. And so I'm curious what does it feel like when you did your job? You know that there's a game there, and then it feels like maybe someone else might have kind of dropped the ball in a way, and it just dies, and you're just like, but don't it's too late. They're already
actually. You bring up a really good point. In that time when that was happening, there were other things, right? Load times were just atrocious on the consoles. But there was a part of me where I was like, I can't help with that. I don't know how to do that. I don't have the capacity to do it. I wish I could. But meanwhile, we have deadlines. We're trying to get our stuff done. And there was a little bit of compartmentalizing that for me, where I was like, even if it takes them 5 minutes to load into the game, I just have to make sure that the hottest animation and the coolest stuff is on the other side of that 5 minutes.
Rewarding. Make it worth the wait.
Now, the worst scenario is that no one waits that long and then they never see it.
Yeah, sure.
Right. But the work was still done. The work still exists. We still are able to show it and get jobs and whatnot. But there was that kind of fear where it was like, well, I can only kind of drive this one part. So I hope the rest of it is going to come through.
I should have planned this better. We should have all had a beer. We could have poured one out in the name of Evolve. Because it deserves it. Well, I think it's time. It's these conversations are kind of crazy because we get into it and then I feel like I'm neglecting chat as per usual. So chat, I love you. I really do. It's sorry that earlier I was not able to even communicate with you because there's some weird bug with the interface, but I would like to get to some questions. Do you feel up to that there, Mr. Gibson?
Oh yeah. Okay,
sweet.
I'm looking at some chat here.
Yeah, there's lots of good stuff. I mean, we have some questions that came in before the show, so I'll make sure we get some of those. We'll make sure we get some of these. So if you listened to my instructions and you were holding on to that question like I asked you to, now's a really good time to drop it. If you put it before, then don't assume I'm going to scroll all the way up to find it because there's just too many. So please do redrop it because I'm only going to look towards the bottom of the chat list here. So I'll grab the first one I see here. Let's see. This is always hard because there's a lot of people just talking about the stuff that we're talking about. I'm going to start with some of the questions that we had before. Now we'll get back to the chat questions. So one of the questions is, how much do you know about the background of a character before animating it? So like what, or like what's your approach? Like, do you like, where do you go for that information? Do you find how important is it? How much information do you need to inspire kind of giving life to a character?
So I need as much information as possible. And the reason I say that is because it's a lot more about managing expectations. So unless I'm in charge and it's my game, I need to know what the writer wants. I need to know what the concept artist expects, what the game director expects, what the audio guys are looking for, what the effects artists want. Like I need to understand what their expectations are so that I can try to meet them or explain why I think we should change them. Does that make sense?
Yep. Totally.
So it's not just like, well, I need to know where they grew up so I know how they walk. No, I need to know, like, do you want this character to be like the scariest thing you've ever seen? Or is it, you know, the sexiest character you've ever, like, you got to try to set those boundaries. So I like to have a lot of conversations with everyone on the team just to try to nail down what are the expectations that you're seeing for this character. Actually putting pencil to paper or starting to press buttons on the computer, I will take from those conversations that I have about what are your expectations for this character. Then I will go and try to create kind of a mood board or like a, you know, here's my pitch after talking to everyone and reading the script or whatever. Here's what I think. I think they should have, you know, kind of like poses like this, maybe angles like this, stances that are kind of this way. One good example would be Viper in Valorant. We weren't getting a lot of direction on her. And so what myself and the animation team sort of decided was, let's go with like evil queen, like Maleficent kind of feel for her, right? Because she's, the fact that like her backstory is that like her family was killed and she's like the scientist, and now she's designed all this like poison to kill everybody else to enact revenge for killing her family. I'm like, that's pretty terrible. Like, you're a horrible person. Right. And I'm like, but you know, she's wearing this like skin tight suit and has this like skull mask and stuff. And I'm like, well, that sounds like an evil queen to me. Like, she's going to feel like she is better than everyone. And that's going to translate to, how does she stand? How does she walk? What kind of gestures does she do with her hands? And, you know, how does she look at you, like down her nose, you know, or does she look at you this way or out the side of her eye? Like, all those different choices that you have to make. And I like to try to boil them down into, not necessarily archetypes, but like, you know, something that's easily digestible, like evil queen was our kind of like our sort of thing that summed up that character. And that was after talking to everyone and then trying to like source what we felt made sense in the lineup of characters.
That's a smart process, because that way, like, you can pull from all the different parts, right? Like, because everyone's gonna have some interesting ideas, and some of those departments have needs, right? Like, there's often game design has some specific things, right? Like, for instance, like talking about gameplay mechanics, how can you work in some of the gameplay mechanics into the character? You know what I mean? For instance, they have a special attack. It would make sense if somehow that was incorporated into the backstory of the character, and also, of course, into the design of the character. I find animators are like, when utilized properly, they can be that sort of singularity that all those things coalesce into. But like, I like that process, the idea of like literally interviewing different kind of stakeholders and then trying to distill it down into making sure that you put together a character profile that checks all the boxes, or at least as many as possible. I
think what would be good for non-animators to understand is, you may say he throws a grenade. Now it comes across the animator's desk and it's like, well, I sure as shit, I'm not just going to throw a grenade. Like, this is going to be the greatest, most unique, special storytelling grenade that they throw.
Like, this is the chance to make it big.
Yeah. And so even though it's 8 frames or something, we're like, no, but like, we want to make it special. We want to find what makes that thing super unique. It may seem silly when we come to you and we're like, what about this? What about this? But we have these 8 frames, or, you know, sometimes it's longer. We have these frames And
They're precious.
every frame we're making a choice, a very specific choice.
Totally agree.
And we don't want it just to be like, I threw a grenade.
It's funny, I'm gonna.
Like-
so this. I mean, I need to jump on this really quick because I think this is interesting. I think it's gonna be very useful for people that are listening because this is something I notice a lot, right? And I feel like it's on teams that are sometimes struggling a little bit to be motivated, where sometimes animators are just literally phoning it in. Like I wish that all the animators I work with on a regular basis think like that, like where they're like, this is an opportunity to do something interesting and iconic, even if it seems like a trivial thing. Because if you treat all of the things like this, whenever you can, obviously you can't always because there's too much time, there's not enough time in the day to do all of the things, but pick your battles and treat something that would seem maybe otherwise mundane, and then because that's how characters like Junkrat are created, right? It's like they are a grenadier character, but like reimagined in a really wild and outrageous way, and everything about them is interesting and fun, and nothing feels better. I've never felt more excited about lobbering grenades at the enemy front line than I do when I'm playing someone like Junkrat, right?
Yeah.
But like a lot of those ideas do come from animators because they're the ones that are gonna like make it fun and give it a face, So how do you like in the past? What do you do to crack like that whip of creativity on your team to get them that inspired that they really do treat something that's possibly not super exciting and make it something really special? What have you done in the past?
I found success. There was an animator working on a first person ability in Valorant for Reyna, and she is she's like kind of like a vampire, like soul stealing kind of character, and so she can pull the soul from the character she killed, and then is supposed to like kind of put it in her heart. Was the idea. We had done some stuff where like in first person, like the hand just goes out and grabs it and pulls it in. We tried a whole bunch of different takes on it. The way that I got through to the animator was this isn't it is not unique enough to stand out as a special thing that this character can do. Anybody could go grab it and pull it in. Anybody. What makes it special to her? Why, like, what can she do that no one else can do? Right.
And so we do.
And so we started looking at her character like, oh, well, she has these like tattoos that run down her arm. And actually the idea is that feeds into her heart. Right. And so that's where we came up with the idea. Okay, so she grabs the soul, but then she holds her arm out and scratches the soul into her tattoo.
That's awesome.
Right. And that now becomes an iconic,
super iconic
move. Just that character can do. And it still gets it, gets it across like what she's doing. She's taking 100%. This thing and stuff. But that's where you can just take a choice and just tweak it. And now it's like, oh, that's Reyna. She just,
And this is so important for games like this because players that play these characters identify with these characters. So they want that. They want to give me something to identify with because they like the role-playing fantasy of being them and kind of embodying them if it's kind of like a blank canvas, it's not that much fun. But if you get to do that and like feel it when that's happening, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. And it's super fast. Like it's a super short amount of time. So a lot of times you just read that pose. And so that pose becomes almost iconic in a sense.
David wants to say something.
Yeah, we have plenty of
more questions.
Great question on the chat. So,
well, but like, we're if really you don't
busy. Mind, there's one that I found out that was
busy nerding out, though, David. We're super busy.
I know. Sorry, guys. I don't want to.
No, that's all right.
No, it's
interrupt you. But yeah, as a lead on Veteran, how much did you got your hands dirty? And more in general, do you feel that even if you're a supervisor or even director, how valuable it is to keep your hands dirty? And the second part of this question that is also super interesting, if you have an animator that struggled, did you completed his work or recasted his work to another animator? How did you dealt with this?
Oh boy. All right. Make sure I don't skip that one because I think that's important. So the first part was, how much did I get my hands dirty? Now, the production schedule was super tight on Valorant, so I wasn't able to do any in-game assets. But what I was able to do was help kind of set the style for what the animation style could be. And so I only did 2 animations on Valorant, and they were just 2 character select animations. And the first one was on Jet. And that was this first animation where I was like, hey, I gave a whole presentation to the team about the animation direction that I wanted to hit, why I wanted to hit it. Here's the pieces that kind of make this style. And then I was like, and I'm animating this to show you how you take those pieces and actually key it in Maya and get the results. And it was things like very quick moves and extreme hold poses with a lot of secondary action. So hit a pose, don't do anything. Like the character can blink or something, but I want you to just sit in that pose. And then I want the hair and the cloth and everything else to kind of be crazy, like overactive. That's what's going to help keep the character alive. But you can just live in that pose for a while, right? And that was a lot of the style. So I was like, I need to do an animation so that I can, one, I can show the team, but two, when the team starts to do it, I've already done it so that I can help them when they start hitting some spots and they're like, I don't know how to get this to feel the way you did yours. Because I've already done it, I can say, oh, you need to hold this 5 more frames, or, you know, change this pose or whatever it is. I wanted to do, I think it's very important for anyone in a lead role to know how to do the work. You don't have to do the work, but you at least need to know how to do it. So I think it's important for you to be able to do it. You may not actually physically do it, but I think there's a level of respect that you owe the team to know how to do it. Yeah. I was able to do quite a bit on the project behind the scenes. I didn't need to create the assets, but that is something that I wish I had been able to do, is maybe take an agent all the way from beginning to end in game, because then I can fully understand what the animators are doing and what potential struggles they have, or some things we could fix, or some things that are just, you know, super awesome or whatever. If someone is in a position and they don't have the ability to do the work or fully understand the work, then I think it's a personal responsibility of yours to respect the people doing the work and lean on them and be honest with them. Because I've worked for plenty of people that don't know how to do the work, that treat you like garbage when you're not getting the results they want. And you're going, well, maybe if you knew what I was doing, you could help me get there, right? Instead of kind of treating me like I don't know what I'm doing, you know, we could be a bit of a team here. So if you find yourself in that situation where you're like, okay, I was hired in, you know, at a lead level, I don't actually know the engine, I don't know any of this stuff. Don't act like you do.
No, that's
don't fake it. Like that's just, you're just digging yourself a hole, and it's not gonna end well. Just be honest with the team. Just say like, you know what? I don't know how to do this, but I like what you're doing, but I think we should try this, right? But be honest and own it, and maybe ask for help. Like, hey, what do you guys think I should do, like, to get, you know, more up to speed on the tools or whatever.
And when it's someone in your team that is struggling, because at some point you want to give them ownership and you want to put them in a situation that they can succeed. And there's one point that you're like, uh-oh, it's not, or even if we end up approving this in a couple weeks, it's not going to be a satisfying approval. It'll be like, all right, let's move on.
I think
where do you find the balance there?
So I have a very very hard rule for myself where I do not want to open your scene file. I don't want to set a key in I don't want to touch your scene file. That is a rule I have.
It's probably because it's scary in there anyways.
Well, you don't know what you're going to find. Constraints all over the place, 300 layers that aren't named.
I just can't unsee.
But more importantly, I think that right there just breaks it. Like that breaks that ownership, that breaks that trust.
Yeah, I agree
with someone. And if I am doing my job good enough, I should be able to get you there without having to touch your scene file. Right. Now, obviously, if we spin for long enough, then maybe we're finding like, okay, maybe there's some things we need to work on that if you're struggling for that long, we should probably work on that. But absolute the last option on the table is to give the shot to somebody else.
Yeah.
In my opinion, because nothing is more demoralizing.
But I think that if you end up there, it's probably also to be very transparent by the fact that it's most probably a problem of casting. That that task was not provided to the right person, so it's in part the fault of whoever decided to give this task.
I think you're right. I think there needs to be. Now, obviously, there's going to be those times where maybe someone just is phoning it in or isn't motivated or committed or something, and you've done everything you can and they just can't achieve it. But the majority of the cases that I've experienced is someone is struggling for whatever reason. You need to also take some ownership in that struggle and make sure they know they're not alone.
Yeah, totally.
And even if it gets to the point where it's like, we need to give this animation to somebody else.
Yeah.
You also need to be super transparent. It's not because you can't complete it. It's just because it needs to be completed by tomorrow.
Exactly.
Or the dominoes start going and we're behind schedule and Pete can't take his vacation because he's the audio person that now has to wait for the thing. You know what I mean?
And you don't want to have Pete angry.
Yeah. But in that space, I feel transparency is key because you need to explain to them why this has to happen. But then more importantly, I think right in that moment, you go, let's take a moment to create a plan for the two of us, me as your lead and you as the animator. You struggled with this. We know we need to work on it. Let's come up with some kind of plan. Maybe it's, maybe we screwed up on casting, but maybe we didn't. But we need to kind of ease you back into this for whatever, right? Yeah. And I think the more transparent and the more supportive you can be in that space, the better. Now, there's always going to be circumstances like on a film where there's 75 animators. Sorry, they might just take the shot from you and be like, "Here's another shot. Hope you can do this one."
Yeah, suck it up.
Because it's so fast, and you're one of 75 people. You're probably not going to get that kind of intimate
special treatment,
one-on-one treatment. But on in games on a team of 10 animators,
I agree.
I think you should be able to get that.
Yeah, you're touching on the coaching element of being a lead. Like the support part is really real. Like it's not just about helping them get the shot done, but it's also helping them be better and to level up, right? Like, because everyone wins this way.
And I've had people who oh hey, I'm gonna take. I had this vacation planned, but I'm not done with this thing. Well, it needs to get done. In that space, I'm like, I'm going to give this to the other animator to finish it, but I want you to know that. Yeah. And I want you to tell me, are you okay with this? Do you have any concerns? Is there anything you were planning on doing that you would like the other animator to know about? For sure. Like just if you include them in that decision and in that discussion, I think everything will end up a little bit better in the end.
Yeah, because a lot of animators treat these shots or these animations like it's their baby, right? And it's like you take it from them, and at the very least, it'd be nice if they still get to go visit the baby when it grows up to be an adult, right? Like, they should still have some, as opposed to the unspoken. Well, sorry, you didn't make your deadline. Thanks, I'll take it from here, and then you give it. And it can be a big moment of shame. It's even worse when I find you give it to another team member because that creates this sort of between them if you're not handling it properly. We're at 11, and I don't know if you have time for a couple more questions because if you do, great. If you don't, it would be completely understandable.
Let's go. Let's do it.
Okay. So there's another question here that I think is really great. Well, there's lots of questions. There's like a million of them, but the one I'm going to pick on right now is a one that talks about tech, because I don't think it gets mentioned enough either in these kind of conversations. I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, but essentially the person is asking, have you seen a correlation like over your journeys at so many different game companies? You would have seen different technologies, like some proprietary engines, maybe some non-proprietary engines, and different teams have different levels of tooling and pipelines. Like, how much of an impact does that make in your mind as far as the final product? Like, how important is the tech? That's a good one.
I feel like thinking about it just from an animation perspective, it's less, in my experience, it's been much less about the tech inside of the engine.
Okay.
Or the tools inside of the engine. And it's much more about the rigs and the tools to animate and manipulate those rigs, and then possibly like what happens when they go into the engine. Kind of like what I'm getting at is like, well, how do we do hair and cloth?
Yeah.
Right. Is that all going to be physics simulated? Can we potentially add poses on top? Can it be animation driven so that we can hit a really cool pose, but then let it, do its physical stuff after that? Like, can we ramp in and out of that simulation? Things like that. But for me, it's always been much more about the rigs than it has been about the engine tech.
So
now
you see the correlation there, like in the projects that have had really good rigs, you've noticed a bigger chance of success where studios and projects that may not put such of an emphasis on that, so you've detected a not such a big chance for success. Is there where you're drawing a conclusion there? Okay.
Yeah, I would, I'd say something like Overwatch. Those characters and the rigs on the characters, I mean, everything on that game is top notch across the board. But when you're seeing a character in a play of the game, or you see a character, I don't know, in a commercial or in a thing or whatever, like that's the in-game character.
Yeah, that's
like that's not a separate thing.
Yeah,
Now in the cinematics, that's going to be separate. Even the ones that kind of look like they're in-game, those will be a slightly higher res.
Yeah.
But anytime that we're animating them for something that you see in the game, like that's the in-game character. If you walked up to the character, like that's what you would be seeing. And the fact that we're able to get the expressions in their face, hit super cool poses, and make really nice shapes with their silhouettes, I mean, that's all credit to the character design and the rigs, that we can push and pull things to get the performance that we want.
Nice. I have another one, David, unless you have one that you want to pull out.
No, go ahead.
So there's another one that's sort of tech related as well, which I thought was really interesting. It's a question coming in from Pixel Theory TV. They were asking about procedural animation in general, and like the evolution of it becoming more and more a focus of productions. And like, where do you see it going? What are your thoughts on procedural animation? Do you feel like it's sort of, is it encroaching on our creative space and like, removing our ability to keyframe all those movements? Like, what are your thoughts?
So when you say procedural, are we talking about like motion matching?
I think that's an example. I think that I would say like motion matching is one. I would say that maybe even like stuff that's like, based on control rig in real time, that's actually moving things, or like, endorphin and in like all those euphoria stuff, like where it's like sort of this weird merger between physics and like, I think procedural animation meaning something that's not keyframe, something that's been done inside the engine. So in real time.
Yeah. I think all of that stuff is great. Like I'm on board with all of that, because I think what it's going to do is create more immersion for the player, and hopefully it's going to further push the performance and the feeling of the character being a part of the world, right? And reacting to what the player is having the character do. I don't worry about these tools, replacing me as an animator or replacing animators or anything, because I think we have a skill that creates performances and creates personality that the computer can't do.
Yeah.
Whether it's mocap or keyframe, it's just not possible. Like the computer can't replicate, someone who is sad or something like that. Like to the degree that we can as animators, if we were to have the time and focus to create that performance.
Yeah.
I always see it as a tool to, just further push what we've already created, and maybe even extend the life of the assets that we've made.
Yeah.
So maybe we don't need to make as many assets, because there's these runtime procedural things that augment them. So you don't realize it's just the exact same walk cycle the entire time.
Exactly.
But there's these different things that are happening because they're going up and down a curb or whatever.
Yeah.
What worries me more is, let's say, motion matching. That's a really cool tool. And if people don't know what that is, that's basically you feed a bunch of data, like locomotion data, into your animation system. And then at runtime, it picks and blends what should happen as the player is moving the character around.
Yeah.
And it looks really cool. But currently, it takes so much data to do
very
it
hungry. Yeah.
that the only realistic way to do it is with mocap.
Yeah, totally agree.
So what worries me is, does that mean it's just going to be more bipedal human-shaped characters in video games? You know, because there was a while at Blizzard where we were experimenting with that, but I was doing it on creatures. And the problem is that it takes so many assets to create that I've got this quadruped creature thing. I'm 10 assets in and I'm already exhausted.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can't possibly think of other possible things that I need to make, you know? And that's where I think that's where my kind of worry is like, oh man, is it just going to be more humans?
It's fine. We'll just mocap tigers and stuff. It'll be fine. Stop worrying about it. It'll be okay. Yeah. I mean, I see it in a similar way. I like the idea of at least using technology to make it so that the animation team can focus on quality over quantity, because we can make the animations we do make and need to make awesome and full of personality, and then let math and science handle a lot of the glue between, right? Because nothing sucks more than having to build like hundreds of transitions that are like only 8 frames long. Assassin's Creed is full of that kind of stuff. And I mean, it can be soul crushing to have to build that many pieces of data that have to be handcrafted when it could possibly be a bit more. I mean, nothing against the Assassin's Creed team. I mean, they paved the way for highly realized video games. So like, I'm a fan. I'm just saying that the team there was a lot. And I think that I like the idea of being able to work on quality over lots and lots of these little mini transitions.
Yeah. Now, I think it's also like it's different games too, right? Like
for sure.
in these PvP games that I've worked on,
totally,
we don't need motion matching. We don't need all that procedural stuff. But if you're making like a heavily story-driven game with a super high fidelity, look and feel to it, that stuff should be used to enhance the story, enhance the character's progression and personality. Yeah. Amen. I got one last one, and then we're gonna call it on there, if you don't mind. Okay, so the last question here I'm gonna ask is, and I'm sorry that this is only the last one. I always feel bad that I have to leave questions on the table, especially when there's so many good ones. Well, we'll just have to do this again then. Yeah,
exactly. That's it. It's an easily solved problem. This is a fun one. I like to always end these with like a fun question that's always entertaining and kind of gets back to the basics. And this question is, what is your favorite game? This is Josh McAnum. What is your favorite game? I'll just throw it up there. I didn't do that. I'll show, but I'll do that this time. What is your favorite game that you play, or what are the favorite games that you play when you're burnt out from the project you were working on, or to just get a fresh pair of eyes? Like what are those fallback games?
That's a good question. So the fallback game that I'm falling back to right now is Bad North.
Oh, interesting.
Have you guys played that?
I've heard of it, but I've never played it.
It's just a little roguelike kind of strategy game where it's like you go to different islands and then these Vikings are attacking and you have to like move your troops and stuff. And it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, I can kind of turn it off and just try to beat
Very
it.
Casual, right?
But at the same time, I know it was a very small team that made it. There's a part of me that's like, I'm dissecting it while I'm playing. I'm like, oh, I see. So like the other night I was playing it and I'm like, wait, all the characters are little 2D sprites, but only at one point when the camera reaches a certain axis point do these sprites flip, and because they have swords and shields, and like you can see them flip, but they just flip over and I just sat there I ended up losing because I was like, why is it in this point? And then then I'm going like, okay, how did they determine the angle of the camera to determine like this is when they should swap the sprites? And then I was like, well, maybe I'm overthinking it or whatever, but that's an example of a game that's
fun. So it's in other words, it's relaxing because you could just play it casually, but it's also something that inspires you and gets you thinking, right?
Yeah.
You know what's interesting about that answer is, and I think that a lot of people should take note, because a lot of people out there think they want to get into video games. They're an animator that wants to transition to video games, or they want their first job in animation. They think games would be cool because I really like games. And what I always have to tell people is, being a game animator is actually I always say it's important to understand that you should be thinking of yourself as a game developer first. this idea of understanding how to make a game, because it is a complex technical puzzle to sort of solve to make a really good game. And you need to be thinking on that level. You see what David's always doing. He's thinking about how would I leverage this, and how would you solve this problem? How would you make this work? This is like, it's really an engineer's kind of job. We're all kind of in a game. That's how you should be thinking. You happen to be bringing animation to the party. It's like something that you are a specialist in, but first and foremost, you have to be thinking yourself as a game dev. I think that is good advice for all those who are interested in being successful in a game industry.
One thing that I've been really focused on lately is looking at games and trying to pick apart the very purposeful limitations they gave themselves.
Yeah.
So one might be, it's a 2D side scroller.
Yeah.
There you go. Like,
yep.
You can't see anything except for this flat image. One might be a 45-degree isometric thing and the camera doesn't move, right?
Totally.
And another one might be Breath of the Wild, where you can go wherever you want and put the camera wherever you want. And all of those things are very purposeful choices they made.
Yeah.
And especially if you're going to go try to make something on your own, it's okay to give yourself some of those limitations, because I'll tell you,
it's better.
One of the biggest hurdles I've been facing when I try to make my own game is it's a third-person adventure game where you can kind of go wherever you want. And I'm like, it's too much. I need more limitations. You know, it's like, and it's not that like I can't figure it out. It's more like it's just too much work to do. And I don't think it's necessarily worth it. You know, like people aren't, so focus on setting some limitations for yourself so that you can actually achieve something that is the quality you want it to be, or the feel you want it to be. And especially if you can, like, my head keeps going to like fixed cameras, because as soon as you fix that camera, you can compose everything that's on the screen. Every frame, you can make it look exactly how you want it to look. The pose will look exactly the way you want. That tree in the background will look exactly the way you want. But as soon as you let the player move the camera wherever, oh boy, there you go. Like, I don't know, this looks like a mess now.
And it's not just this, but it's like, it's often been said that, like, the technical limitations in video games, to embrace them, because those limitations are the birthplace of innovation. It's the birthplace of creative problem solving that should lead to being able to unlock all these other things. Like, make a choice, live with the consequences, but then learn to leverage the possibilities that come with that choice and do that well. Well, David, honestly, thank you. Thank you on behalf of all the whole community. I've had nothing but amazing comments in chat about how awesome this chat's been. So hopefully we will have a chance to get you back. I would be remiss to not ask you one final question from my own heart, and that is, of course, who do you play in Valorant? We all want to know.
I like Jet. I like it's the mobility. I like to be able to, like to fly, zip away, because
I get it.
I'm not very good at tack shooters because I just want to jump around.
You didn't strike me as a Jet kind of person. It's interesting. It's sort of shattering my image of you, but that's interesting.
Yeah.
I suck at that game, so I really have no horse in this race.
Who's yours?
I've been bouncing around, and I haven't played it in months, but it's the healing character. I always forget what's
Sage.
her name. Sage, exactly. I always play a utility in games like this because I suck. I can't get a kill, but if I can at least take a bullet for somebody or heal
someone,
that's it. I mean, that's usually what I gravitate towards. Shooters are not my thing. So, I mean, I wish they were. I love them, but I'm no match for these 15-year-olds, man.
That's what I was about to say. Like, I've noticed a correlation as we continue to get older. We become less good at shooters. So
that's just the way it is.
It's a young player's game.
It really, truly is. So thank you for that. I'll look out for you next time you're online, so I can maybe heal your ass instead of getting shot by your ass. And
all right.
I will like to do this again. Like I said, thank you very much, David, my co-pilot as usual, my partner in crime, and Mr. David Gibson. Thank you very much for being here. And
thanks for having me, guys.
Cheers.
Thank you, David. That was great.
So David Gibson, the man, the legend, that was awesome. It's always, I feel like I can always talk to this guy for probably forever, because obviously we're cut from similar cloth. We both love video games. We both love animation. Like it's just, and I feel like you're all feeling the vibe in the chat tonight too. So that's super cool. This video, like usual, will be available pretty much minutes after the stream ends hold on, let me get rid of this. There we go. It will be available on the Twitch channel if you want to look at it right away. If you're super eager to go back and pick the David Gibson of the past, right away his mind with some of the knowledge he dropped today. But also it will show up, of course, on the Agora.Community page, usually within a few days. So keep an eye open for that. Thank you. Thank you for being here tonight. We have obviously more of these in store. We have another one next week, and I'm a jerk because I couldn't remember who that is. Let me just do a quick check on my little Computron here. The next one is going to be with Simon Otto. So, and that is going to be Monday, the 26th of April. So please do tune in to that. But don't forget to check back on the schedule on the live page, Agora.Community /live. That is where we keep an up-to-date schedule of all the events that are coming up, because we have a bunch of Anim Bingo episodes happening this week to wrap up the review of the remaining animations that have not been reviewed from the 24-hour animation challenge back in February. So please do tune into to those as well if you're interested in seeing some good animation breakdowns. We have the same guests coming back. We got Jacob coming for round 2. We have the Pratt brothers coming for round 2, and we also have JD and Sir Wade coming for round 2. So 3 more episodes, more animation bingo. So please do check out the schedule for those events. So until the next time, I will wish you all an amazing night and an amazing rest of the week. Stay animated, my friends, and goodbye.